Okay, you're going to do an oil change on a 2017 Ford Explorer Sport. So this one has the EcoBoost engine on it, so that's obviously their V6 engine with a turbo. So there'll be a couple of things that we'll need to deal with that are unique to that car. So you're basically going to need 6 quarts. I'm using the Motorcraft brand, but basically 530 weight motor oil. You'll need 1 oil filter. I'm using the Motorcraft one here, so that's the FL500S oil filter. Then obviously the typical stuff, got 2 ramps here to drive the car up onto, and then a pan to drain the oil in, and a funnel to fill it back up with the oil. So step 1 will be go ahead and drive the car up onto the ramps. Okay, you can see I got the car up on the ramps, so pop the hood. So the first thing that we'll want to do is open up this so we can let it breathe, and pull out the dipstick. Never hurts to also check it, make sure that you're not losing oil. So do that as well here, but I'm gonna need both hands. So I forgot to call out a couple of extra tools that you're gonna need. So these, and I'll talk about this. So there's a vent or a manifold, however you want to look at it, to kind of push. So if you look underneath the car here, this pushes air towards the exhaust part of the turbo, and it covers up the oil filter. So we'll need, I mean, you can probably maybe do it with your hands. Sometimes it's nice to have needle nose pliers to get that off. And then I forgot about the all-important oil filter wrench, and so I've got 3 examples here. So this is your traditional one, just obviously clamp it onto the filter and twist. This is a favorite of mine too, because this is one where you can put your socket. So you just put your socket wrench on here, and then as you twist, it compresses on the oil filter and lets you get it out that way. Or you've got these traditional ones that basically are like a socket that just fits right on. So you just have to have the corresponding size for the oil filter. So this is on this car, this is kind of my go-to, but these other ones do work. So just something to be aware of. Okay, we're under the car now, and so this is essentially that duct to put air back here onto that part of the EcoBoost turbo. So all you have to do to get, oops, sorry about that. All you have to do is twist these off, and you can see I had the pliers, but for the most part, you can just do it with your hands. One tip though, so go to the rear and do this one first. Yeah, and so that one's bound up pretty good, so I'm going to take my needle nose pliers, which is good because I've seen it where this, like, literally the dealer you get a complimentary oil change and they don't do this right, which is sort of frustrating. And I found this thing to be loose and have to stop it. So now we got that free. And then we just need to get this last one up over here. I may have to set down the camera to do it, but we'll go ahead and twist that and then we'll take this off. Okay, so we got that vent off. So here's the oil filter, and so we can just get the wrench on that. But first step over here towards the back, this is the drain plug for it. It's a 15 mil, so we'll go ahead and do that. And at least let the oil drain out. Okay, so I used both hands to get it off, so I broke it loose. So at this point, I can just go ahead and loosen it the rest with my fingers. Now, one thing I will say is you want to be careful here because this oil will be extremely hot. Ugh. I don't like it when they put it on this tight, but anyway, the oil will be extremely hot, so you just don't want to get this on your skin. That's why I'm wearing gloves, because if this goes sideways, the gloves will give me a little bit of protection. All right, so we'll go ahead and ideally you want to change the oil on the car when it's hot. Other thing is, this is part of the exhaust here. This too, you want, after you've warmed up the car, you do not want to touch this because that'll end in you getting burnt. So just be careful of these items when you're working under here because it's really easy to end up touching that. And here we go. The oil is going to drain out. Okay. And so we'll go ahead and let that drain. Okay, so next the oil's out. So we need to get this oil filter out. So I'm just going to take this thing right here. And if you can see, I'm just going to grab the filter on the side. Just need to give it a little bit of a nudge. And make sure I've got my tray underneath so I don't spill out all over the place. And then what I'll do, because especially when it's hot, I'll just crack it a little bit, and whatever is going to drip is just going to drip into the pan and not onto my hand and my clothes and potentially burn me. So we'll just let that drain for a second. And then the other thing is sometimes the filter is hot, so you can grab it with a shop towel here. That'll collect the oil and keep it off your skin. This isn't too hot with my gloves on, so I'm just going to get it off really quick. Okay, put that into the pan, let the last of the oil drain out. And now we'll go ahead and get the oil filter ready. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get the oil filter ready. We're going to put this back on the car. So first thing we want to do is get this guy out. And so obviously it is the same number that was on the previous one. And then you want to fill the oil filter with some oil. And you also need to put oil on this gasket. So let me do that. Fill this up. This will kind of make sure that, you know, it lessens the amount of time that the car is running without oil, and then a little bit will bubble over here. And I'll use that. And why this is so important is that you want to, if this gasket doesn't have oil on it, you can damage it because the rubber is going to hit the metal and it's just going to start either pull this gasket off or crinkle it or tear it, and then you're going to have a real problem because you can potentially lose a bunch of oil and minimally get stuck on the side of the road. Worst case scenario, blow your motor. Now, the oil filter will soak this up. Being off by just a hair isn't a big deal. So this oil filter is pretty much straight up and down. So I'll go ahead and fill it pretty close to the top here. And that way, pretty full of oil. All right, so now let's go ahead and take this over to the car and we'll put it on. So set this down carefully. So we'll just take this underneath the car. You can see that's where the oil filter goes. Now, be real careful not to cross thread this. It's the last thing you want to do, because that's a vital part of your car that I mean, granted, there are some ways you can see that in the center of that there's a spot for essentially to get a socket on there, an Allen key socket, and to just remove the threaded part, but you want to avoid that at all costs. I often find I need both hands to do this, so I'm gonna, I think I got it to bite. Okay, I got lucky. So now get it on. And then here's the thing, you don't want to put this on too tight, so hand tight only. Now I got a little oil on my gloves here, so I'm going to go ahead and get a shop towel. Okay, so I got my blue shop towel here. So all I'm going to do is hand tighten this. The shop towel is picking up the oil so I can get a good grip. And that's literally all you need. You shouldn't have to put this on any tighter than that. There's a torque spec for your filter. I showed you that socket. You can use that socket, but I don't know how many oil changes I've done. It's quite a few. At the end of the day, hand tight has always worked on everything I've ever done. So that's how you get the oil filter on. And then we'll go ahead and put the drain plug in next. Okay. All right, so I've got my drain plug here. Let's take this and put it back in. So we'll thread that in. Okay. So I've got the drain plug in. Now, there is a torque spec for this. I've always also, similar to like the oil filter, you don't need to put this on too tight because you'll just basically cause this thing to strip at some point, and then you're going to be in a situation where you're going to have to replace the oil pan. So I've always just been a hand tight. It's never caused me any grief. Sorry, I'm talking and I'm not going the right way on this. So my advice is hand tight again. So, like, this has got a pretty good mechanical reach. All right, that is about all you really need to do. That thing's not going to come off unintentionally. And so then next we're going to fill it with oil. And you might ask, why not put the vent back on? Because always a good thing to do is fill it with oil and make sure you're not seeing any oil leaks. And the cover blocks some of my view to this. So that's why I do that at the very end. Now we're going to fill with oil. I got my funnel here, and I'm just going to pour in, and once again 530 weight motor oil. I'm using the Motorcraft synthetic blend, so just pour this in. Okay, so that's 5 quarts. It holds 6. So I'll go ahead and get my smaller container and fill that. Okay, and so I'm going to pour in about 3/4 of this container. Keeping in mind we put a little bit in the oil filter, and then what we'll do is we'll check the level and top it off at the end. Okay. So I filled it with oil, and then what I do is I run the car for a minute, and I just go underneath and just make sure, which you always should do, that there's no oil. So there's no oil leaking from here, no oil leaking from the drain plug, or in general any oil leaks on the engine. everything looks really clean, so we're good to go. Okay, you always want to properly recycle your oil. So what I do is I got my pan here and I got my tray to catch any oil spills. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour all this oil back into the container at this point, and then you can drop it off at your auto parts store. Walmart will take it back, and so that's, make sure, because obviously oil is a hazardous material, so you want to make sure this gets properly recycled. And then the other thing you want to do, which is, I'll take this filter out. You want to basically leave this filter sitting in your oil pan overnight, and that'll drain all of the oil out, and then at that point you can go ahead and dispose of this in the trash. Okay, all right, let's do that. Okay, so next step is we got to get this duct back on. So you can see here, that's where, and that's where the other fastener goes. So we just want to line this up, and just use the little twist on fasteners here. And then in this case, doing my best to hold on to it. I usually get the front too, and then I'll reach for this back one over here. Okay, now the most important part is making sure all of these get on really tight. So this is where I don't want to come in loose, so I'm going to use my needle nose pliers. See if I can find those. Okay, got my needle nose pliers, so we'll just go ahead and tweak these just a little bit, make sure that they're good. Especially this one, because it's a little hard to get your hand in there. And then the last one down here. Okay, everything's on really tight. So I'm feeling good about this. It's not trying to shake it. It's not moving anywhere, so we're good. So, okay, so the last step now that we've got the duct on is to go in and reset the oil life inside the car. And that's often the most forgotten step, and so then you'll be driving along when a shop doesn't do that, and all of a sudden the oil light comes on and you're thinking, well, I just had an oil change, and it's usually because that is a misstep. So we'll go in there and show you how to do that. Okay, so now we need to reset the oil life. So here's my display, and you've got these controls over here. So the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to press this button to get over to the various items. So you can see display mode, and then what we're going to want to do is arrow down till we get to, arrow down till we get to settings. I hit it one too many times. Okay, then we go to my vehicle, click OK, and keep arrowing down until you get to oil life reset. Now you can see 46% what was left, so we went a little farther than where I like to go. Now you just need to hold down the OK button here. So I'm going to do that, and you can see oil life set to 100%. And then a nice touch, since my wife likes it over on this other setting, I'll just keep going back through the menus and hitting the back arrow and then go back to display mode so that it looks normal. And that's how you do it. If you like my channel, please like my videos, comment, and subscribe.